Hello. I have a big pile of exciting new books that have just been published and that I'm eager to read. A group of fiction and nonfiction, some books that seem really good for summer. I would love to know if you're interested in reading any of these books as well. First off, there is a very, very, very special book which has just come out. It is the manuscript edition of Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. That's published by SP Books. I love their editions of these reproductions of the actual manuscripts of classic books. And so Truman Capote's In Cold Blood kind of invented its own new genre of the nonfiction novel, as Truman Capote described it. So this was a book he researched for several years about a family that was slaughtered in Kansas. And so he went to this community, interviewed a lot of people in the community, a lot of the lawmakers and the killers themselves, and he became quite close to one of the killers. So this is the actual manuscript that he wrote during that time, and you'll see in this book some familiar scenes which made it to the final edition of the novel, and other parts which are slightly different from that. So how these books work is quite big like this, and it comes in this slip cover, which you pull the main book out of it, and you open it up to see Truman Capote's actual writing reproduced throughout the book. And it's really interesting how they explain the way he kept his notebooks is he would write in the right-hand page of the book all the way to the end of the notebook. Then he would flip his notebook over and he would write on the opposite page all the way through. So that's why on one side you'll see writing, and then on the opposite side it's upside down. So to read this, you have to read it in that way. And it's really interesting, especially looking towards the end of the book, where you see some of his sketches that he kept. So here's a sketch of one of the killers that he kept. So yeah, it's so interesting. If you're a fan of the classic books, and there are a manuscript edition published by SP Books, it's so interesting to look through the manuscript and see where the manuscript differs from the final version of the book. And there are some books that I love so much that I can just look through and I can see slight changes, and it's just so interesting to think like what the author went through, or the editorial process they went through to get to the final manuscript version, and what extra little tidbits of information you might discover by looking in the actual manuscript, but also just the kind of thrill of seeing the actual author's handwriting. Of course, it could be slightly difficult to read. I mean, Truman Capote wrote in quite a small way, but just to see that reproduced on the page and like what he crossed out and didn't keep, it's so fascinating. Of course, these books are very, very expensive, so it's kind of an extra special treat to yourself or to buy as a gift for somebody if they or you like particularly love this novel. Keeping on with the theme of true crime books or murders, there's a couple of novels which are about murder as well. So there's Penance by Eliza Clark, which is about a journalist who's writing a full account of the murder of a teenage girl in a town, having interviewed a lot of people in the town, a lot of people involved, and the murderers. And it's the question of how much of this is true, how much of this account really happened in reality. I've been so interested in reading Eliza Clark. I didn't read her debut Boy Parts, but had been really interested in. It's still on my shelves. I still want to get to it before reading this new novel. Then there is My Men by Victoria Kielland. This is a fictionalization of a real-life woman named Belle Gunness, who was Norwegian and who moved to America in the early 1900s. There encountered a lot of difficulty and became one of America's first female serial killers. So this is looking at her life and her story, and it does so, I believe, in like quite a poetic way. It is translated by Damien Searles, who's translated a lot of great Norwegian literature, and this book has won a number of awards in Norway itself. Promise by Rachel Eliza Griffiths. This has such a beautiful cover. So this takes place in the 1950s in a small town in New England amidst the rise of the civil rights movement. There are two sisters who come into adolescence, and as news of the civil rights movements travels to New England, their family comes under increasing pressure from their neighbors around them, who begin to see them as a threat. So it's telling their story, and this has been praised by Marlon James, Booker Prize winner, who calls it a magical, magnificent novel. So I wouldn't be surprised if this might get some Booker attention itself. Next is a novel which sounds so good for summer and sounds so fun and imaginative, called Summer Fishing in Lapland by Juhani Karila. So this is a story about a woman who returns to her family farm in Lapland to try to catch a pike from a lake in order to end a curse which is sort of hanging over her, and there she encounters a number of supernatural creatures. This sounds so fun. Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. This is about a woman who moves from her place of birth to the northern country of her ancestors to live with her brother, who's recently divorced, to keep house for him. But when she moves to this rural area, there are a number of natural disasters which start occurring amongst the livestock around them, and the local population starts looking at her critically as if it was her fault, and eventually her brother becomes ill as well. So it's following her harrowing journey and about this difficult sense of belonging. Now, Sarah Bernstein was selected as one of Granta's best young novelists, best young British novelists for this year. So I'm really keen and interested to read her work. History's Angel by Anjum Hasan. This is a novel set in contemporary Delhi about a mild-mannered school teacher of history who one day gives in to the provocations of one of his students, and their events kind of spiral out of control, and his life, which was contemplative and really peaceful, then goes into chaos. So this has been praised by the author Gitanjali Shri, who won the International Booker Prize, who says, "History's Angel is a seething seismic tale told in a subdued, sad, ironical tenor. It is compassionate without being sentimental. The novel asserts humanity and hope in the face of widening fissures through its main protagonist, who draws sustenance from a deep historical perspective." Nightbloom by Peace Adzo Medie. I love this beautiful, colorful cover to this novel, which is about two female cousins who are also best friends growing up, but when they become teenagers, one of them becomes much more withdrawn, and they go on to lead very separate lives in Ghana and America, but then they're reunited and start looking through the secrets of the past and want to stop the past from repeating itself. The Librarianist by Patrick Dewitt. So this is an advanced copy of the novel, and this is the finished edition. I love how it's like a library card for taking books out on the cover. So this is the story about a retired librarian in Portland, Oregon, who starts volunteering at an elderly people's facility, and there he starts sifting through his own past and the choices that he made and how he came to this place. Big Girl by Mecca Jamilah Sullivan. This is a novel about a girl growing up in Harlem in the 1990s who's very creative and funny, but she's also severely criticized for being overweight. So it follows how she, as a queer black girl, learns how to take up space in the world on her own terms. I think this sounds so good. Next, I have a really interesting sounding historical novel set in the 1500s called Red Smoking Mirror by Nick Hunt. This takes place in what's now known as Mexico and is about the tension between settlers and colonialists and the native population and the emperor of that time. Sounds like a sweeping, adventurous story. I also have a couple of really interesting sounding new nonfiction books. So first there's the Bathysphere Book by Brad Fox. So this is a narrative nonfiction book about a occasion in 1930 when a zoologist traveled down to a level of the ocean to see all the bioluminescent life and creatures that existed there, which had never been observed before. And I find deep ocean exploration so fascinating, and also the inside of this book is so beautiful with these illustrations. If you look at the back too, it shows the nightlife of this space under the sea, and you can see the metal ball that's like descended down into the ocean to observe all of the weird creatures down there. Silk by Aarathi Prasad, and this is both a biological and a cultural history of the famous material of silk, looking at its origins, its uses over time, not just for clothing, but also its possible potential uses. The List by Yomi Adegoke. This is a proof of the novel, and this is the finished copy. So this is about a young female journalist who is very successful, and she's about to be married to a man who is also very successful. But then one day she sees online a list of people which are being called out for inappropriate behavior, and her future husband is on this list. So it's about what she does with this information and about the difficulty of modern online life. And finally, I have a very fun sounding novel called The Housekeepers by Alex Hay. So this takes place in the early 1900s in England, in a very grand house in Mayfair. And one day the housekeeper is let go, and so it's about what she and the other servants of the household do to take control of the household by using the secrets of the masters of this house against them. So the author, Kieran Millwood Hargreave, says of this book, "Punch the air good. This is the Edwardian heist novel you never knew you needed. Flawless, lawless fun." So those are all the books I want to talk about. Like I said, let me know if you're interested in reading any of these books, or if you have read any of them. Let me know what you think about them and whether you would recommend that I read them sooner rather than later. But I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.